You know that map of the United States you've seen a million times? Well, what if I told you it's hiding some pretty wild secrets right there in plain sight? Today we're going to dig into America's secret geography, and trust me, it might just change how you see the country forever. So let's jump right in.
So let me ask you, how well do you really know that map? Because I'm willing to bet that some of the basic stuff you learned back in school, well, it's about to get turned completely upside down.
Yeah, we're going way beyond just states and capitals here. We're going to look at the weird paradoxes, the crazy extremes, and the incredible forces that are literally reshaping the nation as we speak. Get ready to see the U.S. in a completely new way.
All right, first things first, let's start by completely redrawing that mental map you've got in your head. These first couple of facts, they're going to mess with your basic sense of direction and distance here in the U.S. Okay, so I've got a classic geography quiz question for you. Ready? What are the easternmost and the westernmost states in the U.S.? Go ahead, take a second. You're probably thinking, Maine for the east and maybe Alaska, Hawaii for the west, right? Makes sense?
Well, what if I told you the answer to both questions is Alaska? Yeah, I know, it sounds nuts, but here's how it works. The Aleutian Islands, that chain of islands off of Alaska, they stretch out so far west that they actually cross the 180-degree meridian. And that line, that's what separates the western and eastern hemispheres. So technically, part of Alaska is in the eastern hemisphere, which means Alaska holds the title for both the westernmost and the easternmost point in the whole country. Mind-blowing, right?
Okay, round two. Ready? Which U.S. state is the closest to Africa? Now, the obvious answer seems like Florida, doesn't it? I mean, you look at a map, it's right there, practically pointing across the Atlantic. But nope, it's actually Maine. This is one of those times where flat maps totally lie to you. See, because the Earth is a big old sphere, the shortest path between 2 points isn't a straight line, it's an arc. And when you factor in that curve, the easternmost tip of Maine is actually closer to Africa than anywhere else in the U.S. Who knew, right? It really just goes to show you can't always trust those flat maps we grew up with. And speaking of things that aren't what they seem, did you know the U.S.-Canada border is the longest international border on the entire planet? And get this, Colorado, the rectangle state, it's not a rectangle at all. It doesn't have 4 sides. It has 697. It's because of all these tiny little corrections surveyors made over the years, plus the curvature of the Earth again. So much for being a perfect box.
All right, so we've messed with your sense of direction. Now let's talk about extremes. Because America's a country of just incredible highs and lows. The scale of the geography is honestly hard to wrap your head around sometimes. From these massive mountain peaks to these huge wide open spaces. I mean, just look at this contrast. On one hand, you've got the highest point in the entire country, Denali in Alaska, which towers over 20,000 feet above sea level. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the lowest point, Badwater Basin in Death Valley, California. It's a blistering 282 feet below sea level. The difference between those 2 points is just staggering.
But here's what's even crazier. If you just focus on the contiguous U.S., the lower 48, the highest point, Mount Whitney, and the lowest point, that same Badwater Basin, are both in California. And they're not even 100 miles away from each other. You could literally, in theory, go from the highest point to the lowest point in the lower 48 in a single day. That's just wild.
And this sense of scale isn't just about high and low places. Check out Wyoming. There are more than double the number of cattle as there are humans. Yeah, you heard that right. Over twice as many cows as people. Kind of gives a new meaning to wide open spaces, doesn't it? And the list of American superlatives just keeps going. You think the world's longest cave system is in some, remote jungle somewhere? Nope, it's Mammoth Cave, right in Kentucky. And how about the country's biggest rainforest? You're probably picturing somewhere tropical, right? Wrong again. It's the Tongass National Forest, all the way up in Alaska. Okay, we've talked land. Now let's talk water. Because the scale of America's water systems is every bit as jaw-dropping as its landscapes. We're talking about immense power and a truly massive portion of the world's fresh water. Get ready for this number. 20%. What is that? Well, it's the percentage of all the surface freshwater on the entire planet that's held in one spot, the Great Lakes. 20%. That's unbelievable. And just to give you an idea of how much water that actually is, if you could somehow take all the water out of the Great Lakes and spread it evenly, it would cover the entire continental U.S. almost 10 feet deep. The volume is it's almost impossible to comprehend. And of course, it's not just about lakes. You've got the Mississippi River. Its basin is so huge that it drains water from 32 different states. But this incredible river has a pretty strange secret.
Believe it or not, under just the right and, frankly, terrifying conditions, the Mississippi River can actually flow backwards. Here's how. When a monster hurricane slams into the Gulf of Mexico, it can create a storm surge so powerful, so massive, that it literally shoves its way up the river's mouth and overpowers the current, forcing the river to flow north, in the wrong direction.
All right, for our last section, we're getting into what might be the most mind-bending idea of all. The map of America as we know it, it's not finished. It's not static. The country is actually a landscape that's constantly moving. Yeah, those lines on the map are really just a single snapshot in a very, very long movie. The actual ground under our feet is always stretching, growing, and shifting. It's actively reshaping the country right now as you're listening to this. And we can see this happening in real time. For example, out west, the Great Basin area is being slowly pulled apart by tectonic forces. It's actually getting wider every single year. And then out in the Pacific, the Hawaiian Islands are literally getting bigger. The volcanoes there are constantly erupting and creating brand new land where there was once just ocean.
So it all leaves you with this one really fascinating thought, right? The U.S. isn't some fixed thing on a piece of paper. It's a living, breathing, changing place. And if nature's still writing the map, you have to wonder, what's it going to look like in another million years? It's pretty amazing to think about. Thanks so much for diving into this with me.